What we have in front of us now is yet another Powerbook Duo. Now, this was shipped in by Mark at Mac Effects, and this one is a grayscale model. I typically see and deal with the color ones, and I've not had or messed with the grayscale ones. So this one is new to me. Well, besides the Duo 2300 that or 2300 upgraded 230. This one appears to have a screen that's in decent condition. There's no vinegar syndrome signs or anything like that. I don't see any trackball damage or screen cancer, so I think we'll probably be okay there. We have all of this melting rubber, which is not surprising. Those are going to have to come off. You can see remnants of it on the case. The keyboard has very little wear, and it actually, I can push on the keys on the sides and they go down. So this keyboard hardly was ever used. I kind of wonder if this machine was primarily used in its dock, and it hardly ever was used out on its own. But we got the power adapter to it, which has the molten rubber syndrome, as they all do now. I do need to get in here and see what the caps are like, because I've not cracked one of these apart yet. So I kind of want to do so just to see what I'm dealing with. And I'm sure these are probably really brittle by now, so they'll probably just crack right apart. Anyways, the other thing too is I took the battery out. It did come with its battery. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these batteries are starting to leak at this point. And this one has not, but I guarantee it's probably starting to internally. It just hasn't reached the point to corrode the terminals. So I highly recommend at this point to start splitting these batteries apart and gutting the cells if you ever want to try to rebuild these in the future. Because otherwise, if you leave them sit, they'll get so corroded that rebuilding them is not possible because of how it attacks the BMS inside these things. So that is going to be an issue we have to take care of. But I also still have the front cover plate here, and the problem with these things, the cover won't stay on without the battery being inside, so they'll just fall right off. So I wonder if there's a 3D print file just to have a blank to put in here, but otherwise you get this unsightly hole. Anyways, this episode's not about the battery, it's about checking this machine out, and I'm not even gonna power it on because I already know that we've got capacitor issues up here in the logic board, and if this screen is what I think it is, it's probably going to have bad caps right down here in the screen as well that need to be taken care of. So we need to get this thing entirely apart. Now, I might have mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. The top cover on these will not come off unless these hinge covers are out of the way. Now, the service manual does say that these hinge covers are sacrificial, which makes sense because these things are really, really hard to get off without damaging them. So, of course, in the manual, they knew this too, so that's why they're like, well, if you pull these off, you replace them with new ones. Which means every time you have to get in here to service the hard drive or something, makes it for a really fun time to get those off. So, now that these parts are obsolete and haven't been made in decades, we've got to be careful with removing these and save them as much as we can. So, there we go. I've not worked on a grayscale model, so this is a first for me. I've not seen one of these boards before because I'm always used to the color ones, which have the connector over here instead of over here for the LCD. So upon first glance, we don't see anything out of the ordinary. I mean, we do have the grayscale controller chip, which I think this is the same. No, it's not. I was going to say, well, maybe. This might be the same chip that's in the PowerBook 180 and 140, and I don't know, we'll see. But the other thing too is it's got the RAM expansion in it, and most of these did. They just varied on the capacity of what size. The keyboard itself is revision 1, I think is what that means. So this is the first version. But also, a more immediate concern, as usual, we've got some leak-o-matic capacitors over here. So if this one looks bad, I'd hate to see what's up underneath there. So we need to dig a little deeper so we can see more of what's going on underneath. Now what I did, which you don't have to do, but it's highly recommended if you want to make this easy, because in this day and age you probably need to get in here quite often, is I took a pair of side cutters and I nipped off these little grabbing fingers here. So they were already starting to crack anyways, but I just went ahead and just cut them off. And it's still very soft, but it had shrunk a little bit. I left these little fingers on. So in theory, now that I did that, I should be able to just get in here and slide these off fairly easy. So they're held on so they won't fall off. But now that those little fingers are cut off of there, they'll just slide right off. So that will make removing this thing so much easier from when you need to service it. And you have to service the drive and all of that stuff by removing those out of there. And we have to get them out anyways because we got to get the screen off because of the caps that are inside the display. Now I want to say something, because this happens so often, is in order to remove these, what you do is you grab a spudger tool or something, you get in here first and lift up like this. This comes apart from the front side first. Or, I'm sorry, the back side, because this is the front side. The back side first, so it lifts up. That way you can pull it out like that. And the reason why I say that is up here in front are these little tabs. And they hook into these little hooks down here. So if you try to pry from this side, you'll break these off. And quite often when I see these machines, these are all broken. And it's because people don't realize that you have to like lift it up here first and then slide it forward like that, and it'll all come out. And it's because these little rubbers will grab. A lot of these rubbers are getting hard and cracking anyways, but they'll hold the thing in place where they can't slide this way. So you have to like bring it up to loosen it so they'll come out. And yeah, so that's all it really takes to get that off. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind too, if you want to rebuild the battery and use the battery, there's an alignment jig that you have to print, and the print is available now to get these tabs lined up, because there's a little bit of play here in this motherboard that will position these ever so slightly. And if they're ever so slightly off, they're not going to make contact with these tabs. So you've got to make sure they're in alignment if you want to rebuild the battery. Now, fortunately for me, I don't use these machines enough. Actually, I use them hardly at all to where I want to rebuild the battery. So if anything, I'd build one good machine with all new parts and all that stuff and rebuild the battery on that. But I don't use these enough to rebuild the battery. But I like to have the option. So if people that want to rebuild the battery, you got to line those up properly. What's behind cover number A? Ooh, an IBM drive. I don't know if this is original or not. It says Apple Computer, so it probably is. But these IBM drives, they're nice. I've not yet, and now even it's been 30 years, I've not yet seen one of these drives bad that wasn't physically damaged. Now, I've seen tons of Connors, I've seen tons of Quantums, all of those drives, and they're almost always bad. But these IBMs, they stick it out. I really like these drives. So there's a strong likelihood that this drive is still good. But anyways, let's get that out of the way and keep on going. Now that we got the two halves separated, we can see what's going on. And sure enough, you can see the Pissomatics down here. So all of those guys have got to go. Now this is different than the color ones, because I'm pretty sure the color ones, the capacitors are in a different arrangement. So this is a slightly different design. Well, 100 at 35, yeah, that's the same values. So I think I have those on hand. I might have run out, because I always retop my capacitor supplies, and I think one of these is still on a back order until like July. And I ordered those over a month ago, so I don't know, we'll see. But other than that, it's pretty run-of-the-mill Duo board. In a perfect world, you know what would be cool? This is a tangent, by the way. What would be cool is if, because I know they made these modem cards that were just a blank that only had the 2 buttons and that's it. I would like to recreate that and then suck off the connector, because these connectors aren't made anymore. Suck off the connector and move it over and just have the buttons, because what would be nice is to have an SD card slot right here. Perhaps have an SD card slot that's soldered to this board and somehow a connector or something that runs over around into the BlueSCSI that sits here, so then you can have an SD card that goes here and it's part of the board, right? And then, or I don't know, maybe an antenna SD card combo, but it can't stick out because remember the foot goes there. You'd have to swing the foot out in order to put an antenna on there or something. Because I thought about, well, the serial port is rather useless these days. I could always remove that and put an RPSMA connector here for an antenna, but then it can't stick out past this point unless the foot's down. I don't know. It's a thought. Anyways, with the board being out, now is a perfect time to inspect for cracking on this one. And from what I can see so far, I'm not seeing any signs of stress cracking from shrinking plastic or anything. So this was probably stored well for most of its life. Even when it was retired, because it's not as damaged as what I see a lot of this stuff in. So I'm inclined to leave it alone. So that's what we're going to do. So we know the bottom cover is good. The only thing that needs attention on the bottom cover are these little rubbers. So that has to be cleaned out. But that's not a big deal, so we'll set that aside for now. The next thing I want to do is, before I tackle this motherboard, is I want to get this screen out, which is fun because the problem is these, once again, these little center bars are sacrificial because they have like one-way clips. So once it's snapped in here, they're nearly impossible to get off without breaking them. And once they're broken, they'll just float around in here and not stick back down. So you got to be careful when we get those off. That's exactly what I mean about being sacrificial. They just break right apart. So this side stayed intact. That one not so much. And that's an issue with these. Oh yeah, those little 2 stickers are also sacrificial. And unfortunately, I couldn't save them without damage. I almost never can. But I got it apart, and I forgot these LCDs are integrated into the bezel. To keep this thing so thin, they got rid of all of the metal around the panel. The panel itself is just part of the main LCD housing. So this was custom to Apple. Now, looking at the hinge standoffs, because these are the most notorious ones, and I can see right here, there's a little crack right there, so, and that's to be expected. No exceptions to this rule. Check the other one. Oh, very similar thing happening right next to it. So we're going to have to, these are going to have to be treated. We're going to have to do MEK treatment with this and some heat, and then just kind of squeeze it together. Because I do not have a 3D printed standoff for this one, unlike the color ones, because the color ones are almost always broke. And I have that one. That model was made by Colin, and it's floating around out there. This one, I don't think there's a model for these yet. So I'm going to have to just be super careful with these. But anyways, we've got to get this fully apart, because I'm pretty sure this screen is very similar to the Powerbook 100 screen, where it's got a the only difference is the cable's not molded into it like the Powerbook 100. And this is a grayscale screen, unlike the Powerbook 100. So we've got to get in here, because I bet there's caps sitting right there. So we got to get this shield off. We got to get this thing completely apart. And I got to check this for capacitors as well, because that's just the nature of these things. Once I lifted the inverter board out of the way and remove the shield, which is laying over there right now, the inverter itself does not have any caps that need attention, so I'm going to leave it alone. But as I suspected, look at this. You can see the leakage happening right there. Yeah. So, but it looks like it has just started, and the board and solder joints aren't corroded yet. So this thing was actually stored well, because a lot of these displays, these are completely just trashed, right? So that seems to be the biggest problem with these. But anyways, it looks like all I have to do to get this out is just remove the backlight assembly, which is fairly straightforward. It looks like it's just going to lift completely out of here. I want to protect it so it doesn't get scratched or fingerprinted, so I need to go grab like a little storage baggie to shove this thing in real quick and then get this thing apart. This is a cool construction, but this room is so dusty. It's like as soon as I remove the backlight, you can see all of the debris falling on it. The other thing you can see, possibly, see the little speckles? It's like the first signs of vinegar syndrome, I think. No, it's just dirty. Never mind. It's just, this thing's dirty. It's kind of nasty, but yeah, it's not a big deal. I can clean that. No, because I don't smell vinegar syndrome. But anyways, you can kind of see how cool this thing is, where the glass is just sitting in the plastic bezel and the metal frame just holds it in. That's all it does. So as soon as I take this metal frame out, this bare glass panel is just going to lift out of here, allowing us access to these caps so we can get it cleaned off, cut off, removed, and replaced. With the frame removed, you can kind of see how the LCD is just in the plastic bezel. It's just like they removed... The LCD panel looks off the shelf because it looks almost exactly the same as the Powerbook 100. It actually might be. Wouldn't that be something? But regardless, they took the metal bezel apart on the original display and they just molded it into the plastic frame and only used the rear, to hold it together to get it so thin. So that's actually kind of neat. So they probably collaborated with Sharp to get this thing made to their specs. But anyways, so I suppose what we can learn here is you could use a Duo 230 and probably a 210 as well for its LCD panel to fix a Powerbook 100. But I guess it depends on value. Is the Powerbook 100 worth more than a Duo 210 or 230, or vice versa? I know specs wise, a Duo 210 and 230 will blow a Powerbook 100 out of the water. So perhaps you could part out a Powerbook 100 for its panel to fix a 210 or 230, or vice versa. Not sure, but it's wonderful to have options. When removing these panels, you have to be super, super, super careful and go slowly, because they tend to get stuck together on the back side from the metal, but also from the front side where all the cuff ribbons are to the actual bare plastic itself through these little rubber bumpers, silicone, whatever the hell these things are. If they get really, really, really stuck, and if you're not careful, you'll either crack the screen or worse. Well, actually, I don't know what's worse than that, but tear the cuff ribbons. And if you tear those, well, you need a parts panel or another screen or whatever. So you just got to be super, super, super careful. And even then, I still tore a little chunk there, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. And yeah, you can see how wet that is from capacitor leakage. So it's a good thing I got to this, because it needs to be recapped anyways before it starts eating out and damaging that ribbon, assuming it hasn't already, because as we've learned with the Powerbook 100s, this is a common problem. So we got to get on top of this. So if you own a 210 or 230, you need to recap it and clean it up now. Not tomorrow, preferably yesterday, but now. Got it all cleaned up. I got the caps off of it. I washed it and, scrubbed it with some Dawn dish detergent stuff, and then cleaned it all up, dried it off, followed it up with some alcohol, dried it off again, and then, so now that we got the screen out, I'm just going to go ahead and do that one first since it's already apart before I get to the logic board. So these are 3.3 microfarad at 35 volt. If you use like tantalum, which I don't have, if you use tantalum, you want, because of the D rating, you want to move up to at least 50 volt. But I got electrolytics that I can use here, and that's typically what I just use because that's what I have on hand. So that's what we're going to go with. Oh yeah, just FYI, as of 2025, these particular caps are now EOL, end of life. So they're in the last time buy phase. Actually, no, I think we're past the last time buy phase. So once I run out of these, that's it. I can't get any more. So I bulk ordered a bunch of them because I use them quite often. Perfect. You're not going to see them anyways. Now for the fun part. I got to clean all this crap off before it goes back together. And there we go. That's all there is to it. Even though it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get to, but it's worth it. So now I just got to make sure everything's lined up before I put it together. And also I need to go ahead and repair those standoffs as best as I can before I put it back together. They're not the prettiest, but they'll work. Cracks are filled in. The downside is, and one of the things I didn't account for, is those caps are a bit too thick. So as you can see, it's bulging out the case a bit. There's not much I can do about that because I don't have any surface mount versions of a 3.3 at 50. But, oh well, it is what it is. And as such, I have to clamp it down harder, which means it's kind of torqued a little bit. But we'll see how it works. I don't care a whole lot about a black and white duo anyways, so it's not like I don't want to put an insane amount of effort in it, as far as at least until I know it works. And then, now once I know it works and everything's good, then I can put the surface mount caps in there. So, yeah, we're going to have to go with surface mounts, I think. It is what it is. Next up is this logic board. We're going to have to clean all these caps off the board and clean the board itself. So, first off, I need to jot what we have. We've got a 100 at 35, and then another 100. So these two are 100 at 35, 330 at 16, and then 100 at 25. So we've got, okay, that's about the same. So we've got two 100s at 25. So 2 100s at 25, 3 100s at 35, and then 330 at 16 right here. So 3 100s at 35, 2 100s at 25, 330 at 16, and a 33 at 25. That's what we got. It actually cleaned up really well. So I got all the old caps off and got it washed off. Got the pads cleaned up. No via damage or anything that I can see. No crusty solder joints or anything on the other side, because I've worked on one of these where some of this was crusty. And also, just a little bit of a side note, the Macintosh Portable's Power Manager, the power supply circuitry, is basically the same as what's on here. It's just evolved a little bit as time goes on, but they've basically reused it and just redesigned it ever so slightly to make it a little more reliable. But it's basically the same exact circuit. It goes all the way back to the Powerbook 140, which the schematic for the 140 is known. And if you compare the 140 against the 100 against the Portable, you'll notice they're all using the same circuitry. It's just slight modifications. But anyways, all right, let's get some caps on here. Now, before I start putting this thing back together, all of the caps are now done on the logic board now and ready to go. I want to go ahead and clean this old feet off. That way I know for sure, because there's a pinhole here and I don't want it leaking in and corroding everything. So if I do this now and wipe it off underneath, I won't have a problem. That's it. Just like that. It's all cleaned up. What I ended up doing is I just took a piece of two-sided tape on both sides and just stuck it down. so nothing could come through that hole and cause corrosion. So I think we're good there with that. And like I said earlier, there's no damage on this thing, so it's safe to go ahead and start putting this logic board back in and getting it back together. And remember, you need, if you want to use the battery, you need that tool because look, there's a little bit of play in it. So, not a big deal. We don't need that right now. So, maybe later if MacFX runs reproductions of the Duo battery. I don't know if he will or not. I know he's running reproductions of the Powerbook 100 series battery. And I know he will be making a keyboard for this thing. As far as the battery, I don't know, but it would make sense. Regardless, we're going to go ahead and start putting this thing back together. And of course, we have to do the same thing with the LCD. So we got to get all this old sticky rubber off of it. And we're going to use the same process. What I end up doing is I use alcohol, which will help kind of keep it coagulated and less sticky on my tools. I use a pick tool and I just kind of go at it a little bit and pull it all off. And I wipe it off with a paper towel and I go back with a Q-tip and more alcohol and clean it up. That's how I do these. We got to do the same thing with the power brick. Now, this one's a lot harder to do because it's got so much adhesive and it's much longer strip, so I have to use my Rapid Tack remover. Problem is, there was a little bit of overspray on the sticker and it actually destroys the sticker, so you've got to be super careful with that stuff. It's very strong. So the next thing we need to do is service this trackball and clean all the gunk out of it. As you can see, there's all kinds of buildup, debris, and stuff like that. And if you don't clear that stuff off, it's going to not work well because we have to clean off those sapphire rollers and we have to clean off the rubber rollers, or it's just going to be a frustrating experience to move the pointer. All right, we are slowly venturing on the point of powering this thing up. Now, two things I want to do. One, I don't want to put it all back together yet until we do something about the hard drive, because I don't know if the hard drive is actually any good. It probably is, but honestly, I don't know. But the other thing is, these power supplies, this is from like 93, according to that. I've never cracked one of these open. So I want to see how hard it is to crack this open. And more importantly, I want to see if there's actually any leakers in there. And I have a funny feeling that there are, because almost all of these types of power supplies from this era do. But I want to be sure. So I'm going to crack this apart before I power this thing up. So hold your horses. We're going to crack this one apart next. In order to do that, since these are ultrasonically welded together, I'm probably going to get me a very thin blade like that one right there, and just wedge it in between here and see how hard it is for this thing to pop apart. Because I'm curious how stiff this plastic is, whether it's brittle or not, because these things see a lot of heat. But we shall find out. These things are extremely tough. It popped off really easily up here, but the rest of this, not so much. It wasn't super bad to get apart, but I definitely see at first glance. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I bet, yeah, you know what? I bet that final output cap is leaking. Oh, boy. We have some reefas in this bad boy. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna bet that it's a good thing I didn't plug this thing in. Holy crap. In order to get this shield off, we're gonna have to remove these 3 solder joints here so we can lift it off. Also, I noticed there's these little plastic tabulating looking things on here. It's an Aztec power supply. That's who made it. But I don't know what these are for. But I'm going to presume they probably need to come out of there to get to certain parts of this power supply. As soon as I got it hot, so this thing is wedged in between here and here. As soon as I got it hot, I heard the sizzle, and it's leaked a little bit. So it's not bad enough to cause me any issues, but it is bad enough that it needs to be replaced. I gotta check the rest of these too. Our bigger concern is that damn reefa capacitor. There's like 2 of them. Wow. I think it's a 2 by 4700. This is a weird combination. That came through, the middle pin came through the shield. Because this was soldered to the shield, that was soldered to the shield, and that was soldered to the shield, which is the main ground in the middle here. So, yeah, that's a problem. These Y caps aren't that big of a deal, but this X cap really is. So, we've got, besides this electrolytic here, which is the main one, I'm probably not going to touch that one. We have a 560 microfarad to 35 volt of an unusual height. That's a weird cap. I got to see if I can find that. And then we have a 22 at 50, pretty jelly bean. And then we have this weird reefa. I don't know. It's got 2 ratings. There's 2 times 4700 picofarad Y, or 0.15 microfarad X2. The math ain't mathin'. Even if you add the 2 4700s together, you don't get 0.15 microfarad. Weird. I don't know. These are jelly beans, so I can replace those. So weird. So you know what? I'm an idiot. All I had to do was look at the backside. Right there. There's 3 capacitors in this package, so that makes sense. The topmost one must be the 0.15, and the 2 in the middle are the 4700 Y caps, which doesn't make sense because we've already got Y caps here. So what they did was they put 2 more Y caps across the line and connected it to ground, or the shield. But we've already got 2 Y class caps connected to ground and the internal, I don't know. So there's 2 sets of Y caps and 1 X cap. So I don't know, that's strange. I'll probably just replace these 2 Y caps and then put 1 X cap in there because I don't think I have that. This is weird. So this is interesting. I cracked another one apart and there's some differences. So we don't have reefas in this one. This one is designed in the same way that one is, except they omitted the 2 Y-class caps. And they left these 2 in, but they omitted the 2 Y-class caps here with this design. Also, hang on one second. I lost them. So the 560 microfarad cap is the same one, but the center cap I noticed is larger. And it's a 100 at 400 volt, where the original is 68 at 400 volt. Yeah, 68 at 400 volt, and this is 100 at 400 volt. So that's strange. Let's see. I'm curious if there's a difference on the bottom of the power supply. So here's this one. This is a 24 volt 1.5 amp. Okay. From 96. And this one is a 24 volt 1.04 amp. So there's a different one. So this is a 7783. So there's a couple different ones of these. There's a 7783. And this is a 2693. Or 19200 or whatever. So this one's from 96. Alright. Okay. So we know we have at least 2 different Duo power supplies. The 96 one probably goes to the 2300C, which needs more amps. That makes sense. So as a consequence, we have 2 different designs. So the higher current one has a bigger main filter cap, but everything else is the same. Whereas this one's got 2 small capacitors here, where that one only has 1, and we don't have the other one over there. So there's, yeah, just something to keep in mind. Well, I found the output filter capacitor, got it ordered in. Hopefully it fits. But I already ordered that, and thinking I already had these 22s at 50s on hand, but I do not. I have a 33 at 50, and I have a 22 at 35, so up shit creek without a paddle moment. So I need to figure out if I can use... yeah, I gotta figure out if I can actually use that there. I probably can. I could probably use a 35 volt there, but I don't know. We'll try it. We'll try it and see what happens. It'll either work or it'll detonate into a ball of flames. One or the other. Alright, so here's what we're going to do with the safety capacitors. We have a pair of Y-class caps here, the right value. And then I have close to the right value of the X-rated cap that we're going to put in here. So that should take care of our safety issue on the power supply or noise issue. And then I have those for the output cap. Hopefully it fits. And then we'll just have to pick one of those for there. Ooh, I got lucky. This is the only one I could find too. And it just fits. Fits exactly the way I need it to. So we're trading from a United Kimicon to a Nichicon. And I don't care for Nichicon as of late because of what I've been running into, but this is all I can find. So that's what we're going to go with. Now I think it's safe to try it out. But before I can, I got to get all this mess cleaned up. Well, we're going to know immediately if that capacitor I put in there ain't going to work, because it's going to make a violent, fun popalicious. No kaboom, man. We got a chime. So that means the board's good. Do we have a screen? Yes, we do. We have a screen. Awesome. It's working. Well, the mouse ball works too. Wow, it's running. So, turn the brightness up. Yeah. I didn't have to do much with the contrast either. So, what I'm looking for is my OCD. Do I have the edge of the display even in there? It looks like I do. Yeah, because it has some wiggle room. But I think we'll be alright. So the screen's working. There's no lines in it like on a Powerbook 100 yet. You know, there's a little bit of impact pressure damage here. Maybe a little. But really, it's not bad. It's running. Now it's running on the original board and everything's running, and the power supply is working. So, actually, I'm going to unplug the power for a minute. So, I want to feel. Make sure it's not getting hot. It's not. Because if that was the wrong voltage, it would start getting really hot. So, it's not. Okay, let's put the original hard drive in here and go for broke and see what happens. Okay. Got a chime. Zoom out a little bit here. See if we get a running hard drive. We do. It actually sounds really good. So we have a system software installed that is bootable. I love it. And it's an IBM hard drive. I'm not surprised that it actually fires up and works, because these older IBM drives really did. Oh, geez. Someone put a copy of System 7.5 on this thing. I bet that thing runs very, very slow. But mouse is working. There's no issues there. It has a good copy of System 7.5.1 or better. Because I think verbatim 7.5 didn't have this. This has to be at least 7.5.1 or greater, I think. But it is a functioning system. Nice. As if we had any doubts. I don't know. This stuff's so old. I mean, who knows? Things are pretty crappy these days with how they can be failed. What in the world? Skull and bones. Okay. I'm going to assume that's the hard drive because that's what's highlighted. Let's see, what are we running? Zip drive is not connected well now. I didn't figure. 751. Yep. 12 megs of RAM. Wow, the system software is using 7 megs of RAM. Yikes. That's the problem with System 7.5. It's a RAM hog. But, well, it's working. Let's see, what version of Word is this thing running? No idea, because it's taking eons to start up. Oh, Harvard Business School. So that's where this came from. That explains why it was stored well. Because it makes me wonder if this thing was left in their IT room closet for years and years until it got sent my way. Make a lot of sense with how good a condition it was in, capacitors wise. Because a lot of these duos, I get, the capacitors are absolutely... Yeah, I'm not going to open any of that. All the capacitors are just so far gone that we don't have any... the board is just eaten alive, especially these displays, but... And actually, this thing looks like it's grayscale. Which is something the Powerbook... It is. It's grayscale. Because the Powerbook was not grayscale. The Powerbook 100, I mean. So the fact that we have grayscale is actually quite neat. Yeah, that's got to be the hard drive. Let's see. 80 megs on disk. Created April 28th, 1993. So that drive is probably the original install. And they've just upgraded the OS and stuff since then. Is that the drive? Yeah, that's definitely the drive. Netscape. Yeah, it's fine. So, okay. Pretty bare bones, nothing crazy. Probably nothing worth backing up. I like going through old computers because I'm always curious what software people used. No, there's no modem. Well, there is, but we're not using it. I don't have a dial-up server. Oh, man. Nope, it won't run. Okay, there's a lot of programs that won't run. But hey, it's working. So, I think at this point we should... Well, I don't know. Do you think we should put a BlueSCSI in here? And do a basic system software install? I think that would be cool, wouldn't it? But, alright, well, we can start doing that and getting this thing back together. Because it seems to be working fine. And so does the actual power supply. Which I've got unplugged right now, so I can stick my finger in here. Yeah, it's not really getting hot. So, I can go ahead and get my super glue and just re-glue this thing back together and write on the bottom of it that it's been serviced. So, yeah, we're good. It's working fine. So, no malfunctions there. We are good to go. So, let's get this thing back together. But first, I need a BlueSCSI. Did notice on further inspection that there's a crack down here. But there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Anyways, I ended up putting a BlueSCSI sticker on there because when I got the BlueSCSIs, Joe sent me the stickers. And I went ahead and put the sticker on the bottom of it. That way, when I go grab this machine, or when anyone grabs this machine, we will know that it has been serviced and that there's a BlueSCSI inside. So That's neat. So there we go. We're all good to go. This machine is back together now. I'm waiting for the power supply because I put the glue on the power supply and I had to put it in a vise because I noticed the spring tension of the little fingers that swing out is too much. So it'll just poing, it'll pop it right out. So I'm waiting for that to glue back together first. And it's in the vise at the moment. But anyways, there we go. We have a Powerbook Duo 230. I'm leaving these out because I have to get back in here anyways, eventually, and replace those caps with some solid state caps once I get them spec'd out so they'll fit the clearance. But otherwise, as it is, it works fine. So I'm waiting for that to cure, and then I'll return back to this and get the dock connected and get an OS installed on the BlueSCSI because I put a 1 GB SD card in here with the Ethernet emulation turned on. So that way this Blue Duo will independently work by itself and have access to the internet or a server through Ethernet, through the Wi-Fi, which is awesome for a machine like this because that's the one thing I like about the BlueSCSI. It's so versatile. It's like the Swiss Army knife of SCSI devices with the emulation of the adapter, all of that, because with a Duo, if you don't have the dock or anything, there's no way to use a floppy drive. There's no way to use a USB. USB doesn't exist. There's no way to use an external CD or anything on a machine like this. All you have is the internal SCSI. So if you have a swappable SD card with the the Wi-Fi emulation, really for a Duo, that's all you need to just use the machine and play around with it. This is exactly why I love the BlueSCSI. So my BlueSCSI image is showing up here, but this one and the Legacy Recovery CD is on the external one. So now we're going to go ahead and get the OS installed. For those of you who have never installed an OS before on a Mac, so what I like to do, at least in the case of this machine, now this is personal preference, but because this thing is limited in RAM, limited in power, I don't think System 7.5 is the best choice here. So what I'm going to do is do System Software by CPU. We're going to go Powerbook. We're going to go Duo 230, which is what this is. And then we're going to do System 7.1 on the Duo. So let's see. Here's what we're going to do. This will run the install script, which is a disk copy script. You got to agree with the license terms and all that fun stuff. And then we should be able to just do an install of System 7.1. At least we're going to try anyways. We're going to do, I don't know if I want to do customized. Let's see what we have in the customization. And you know what? We're just going to go easy install. And then just do an install on the Mac hard drive, which is not the hard drive, but we're going to install it on this BlueSCSI. So we will come back when this is done. Interesting. Maybe this version is corrupt. Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Alright, we're going to have to go with the standard System 7.1 and not 7.1.1. Okay, we'll quit that. Let's trash this. Start over again. Okay. Try you again. System 7.1 Duo. This one doesn't have a goodies disc. But we'll try this one. It's weird hearing these machines silent. It feels like a modern computer with how silent it is. Okay, let's try this again. Just install it. Here we go. is actually going pretty quickly, which I suspected it would, considering we're copying it from an SD card to an SD card, with the exception of running the code overhead for all of this. And it looks like we're about to finish. Yep. All right, so we're good there. All of that is done. We have System Update 3.0, which I'm not sure what it does, but we'll go ahead and run it. Nothing wrong with running Windows updates. I mean, system updates. There we go. Let's try that one. Well, it's going pretty good. It's actually installing all the Duo specific stuff. Yeah, we're good. Okay. We'll quit all of that, get it out of here. So we're going to close all this stuff on the legacy recovery disk, which it won't maintain the Windows states anyways, because that is stored on the volume itself, which is locked. So, oh yeah, we're good. Everything's good. So let's restart it and see if it will start from the BlueSCSI instead of the legacy recovery disk. We'll see. Yeah, we're good. There's the update. Oh yeah, we're perfect. We are perfect. I did notice there's a little bit of a blemish up here. Perhaps there's too much pressure on the screen in that corner. Who knows? It's passive. Passive will do that crap. Anyways, yeah, we're good. Let's see how much memory we're using now. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Yeah, we're only using 1.4 megs versus the almost 8 that System 7.5.1 was using. Whew, what a difference. So, what I generally do myself, we've got simple text already, so I don't need teach text. I'm going to trash all the stuff that's irrelevant. And everyone is different here, but what I generally do is just take myself down to the bare minimum, move this stuff out of the way. We're going to have our system folder over here. Actually, I'm going to move the system folder out of the way. Then I'm going to go into the control panels. And from that point, we're going to go and change the views so things snap, because I'm OCD like that. So we're going to snap to grid. Let's do the mouse, because this thing takes too many rolls to get where I need it to go. So, alright, what I like to do is just create a whole assortment of folders. There's applications, and then we're going to go documents, which is going to also serve as my downloads folder. And then we're going to go, let's see, internet, which is where all the internet stuff is going to go. This keyboard has had it, but they all do. And then we're going to have utilities. And I'm sure there's other things I'm forgetting, but that's where it's going for now. System folder goes there, and in simple text goes right into the applications folder. And there we go. That's how I always set mine up. And I also have the BlueSCSI bootstrap image, and that's where we have all of the drivers and utilities like disk copy, and I've got all my SCSI utilities in here. So I'm going to start copying things over that I might need, and then we'll move on. Alright, now that I have all the files over that I need, well, not all of them, but most of them, and I have the BlueSCSI Danaport driver installed, Another thing that I do is I run an FTP server. So I have two FTP servers. This one, 10552, goes to my main PC. So I can actually connect to my main computer. The other file server, well, now my computer froze here. That's the loveliness of vintage computing. Um, I've got two shortcuts. One is my PC, which is, what in the world's going on? You know what? I just downloaded a file, and I bet it's running stuff at Expander in the background. That'll definitely do it, so please stand by. Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. It's unstuffing the newer version of Fetch, which may or may not run on this machine. Anyways, so Fetch is what I use to connect to the FTP server. Now, I got two servers. One goes to my PC, so when I download something off the internet, I can throw it into that folder and pull it right across fairly simply. The other thing that is on here is the FTP server that goes to the Mac. So I can push files over to my Mac bridge machine and vice versa. Because it's the easiest way for me currently to handle files on and off a remote system. Now, you could use a Linux utility known as NetaTalk. NetaTalk is a AppleTalk based system that supports either AppleTalk IP, which this machine won't because it's running System 7.1, but it also supports traditional AppleTalk as long as you have a Linux kernel with the AppleTalk protocol compiled into it. Not all do, so watch out for that one. But more importantly, it's also got patches for limitations where this machine does not, that if the volume size on your host machine is larger than 2 gigabytes, it will crash early versions of System 7 and it will completely bomb out 68,000 machines. So the FTP is a good way to get around that problem. However, if you want to work natively on an AppleTalk share, then you're going to have to use something like NetaTalk because the Apple Share server on a Macintosh is not going to care, what your target machine is. So, for example, my bridge machine has got a 20 gigabyte hard drive in it, and it's split into two partitions. The first 8 gigabytes is the OS partition. The rest of it is all the files. Guess what? That's larger than 2 gigabytes, so anytime you bring up the file server in Chooser, it's going to crash the system when you try to mount it. Every time. You'll throw a type error or whatever. The other problem is, too, is if on newer versions of System 7, even on an 030 Mac like System 7.5 or more, it will mount the volume and you can read or write the volume. But as soon as you try to open an image or anything like that from that volume, it'll lock up the system, completely freeze it. And again, it's because if it's greater than 2 gigabytes. So NetaTalk has a feature, I'm pretty sure it does. If you run NetaTalk on like a VM or a Raspberry Pi or something like that as a little file server for vintage Macs, NetaTalk has the ability to, artificially stuff a 2 gigabyte limit to connecting clients. So that way the computer will always think it's 2 gigabytes wide, even if the file system is 2 terabytes. It doesn't care. You'll run into a problem if you try to read and write files that are larger than what the reported file size is, because you might have unintended consequences. But anyways, I gotta wait for this thing to unstuff. And that's the thing about Stuff at 5. Stuff at 5 is very slow on systems like this. But if I'm not mistaken, this machine, architecturally speaking, I think is the same as like the LC550 or the LC3 or something like that as far as performance is concerned. Alright, now that Stuff It finished running. So now I can switch over to the Mac FTP and hit the button and it'll just connect to my Macintosh file server. And there it is. So I have all kinds of little things on here so I could just get in here and get what I need on the file server. Now, if you're crafty, you could have a BlueSCSI set up and have all this stuff broken up into multiple partitions on a BlueSCSI. But, anyways, this is what I got. So I'm thinking like, because I have copy doubler, I like this. I'll throw that into the downloads folder too. So that's done. The other thing I want to get, so I forget where it is. I think it's like Super Clock. No, yeah, it is, but it's not in here. So there's another folder on my file server. It's called OS and stuff. That came from Charles, aka Mac Caps. And in here is where we just keep a bunch of random crap. So I need to start cleaning all this stuff out, but because I'm pretty sure in here in the control panel I have Super Clock, which I need. After Dark's in here. There it is. Save that because I want that. And then also, I think there's a bunch of internet stuff in the folder for, I think it's System 756. I don't remember. Let's see, System 756, internet software. This is a lot easier if I had, an Apple Talk share, but it is what it is. Fetch 3.0.1. There's what I want. Get file. Throw that in here. So I can update this because this is a little bit, Let's see, 462K. So we're going to kill you. So that means I can literally just go into my documents. And there everything is. So I got my Wi-Fi desk accessory, which automatically extracted. I got my copy doubler, which I can just throw that in here. So that works. Super clock, throw that in there. That works. So let's see. Fetch 301. Move you out here real quick. I'm going to throw you in the fetch 2.1.2 folder, even though it's 3.1. I'll make an alias. That way I can put it on the desktop. It's just easier for me to do it, set up a machine this way. There's many different ways you can set this up, but this is primarily just a quick little walkthrough for anyone that might be wanting to do that. So this is what just took forever to mount. I don't know what version of Fetch this is. Oh, well, there's a few. There's 303, there's 403. I don't know if Fetch 403 will run. It might be PowerPC only, or it might be DemoWare. I don't remember. We'll see. No, it runs. I think that came from the garden. Ah, yeah, this is payware. Quit. So yeah, Fetch 3.0.3 was the last one that was worth a damn. I'll get rid of the sit file. I'll get rid of that sit file. There we go. There we go. So we'll do this. We'll run the font mover and move the Wi-Fi. So the desk accessories are a pain in my behind. Now I've got to reboot this thing. So let's go ahead and restart this guy. And you see the cool thing about Super Clock is it brings up the, whoa. My mouse got way slower. 5.7. Yeah, it's keeping the time and all of that stuff. So that's the cool thing about just little features like this. Now, there is a downfall for doing things like this. And that is when you start adding extensions, like we've got Open Transport, we've got Super Clock and all that stuff. Well, if I go in here, look what we have. We're already using 2.7 megs of memory by the system software, because remember before, we were only like 1 something. So if you're not careful, your memory footprint will continue to increase. So, anyways, I need to get in here and get, there was a, let's see, I forget, what was it I was getting ready to get? Dang it, I forget. Oh yeah, that's right. Utilities. There's another thing we can use for System 7. And that is right here. I think it's B 2.0. I don't remember. It might be 3.1.1. I'm going to put it desktop, drive. Let's see, documents, save it right there. Yeah, see, this one's got the pie chart, which I like having. I like knowing how much is left to go. Now it's going to throw up stuff at Expander in the background. Yeah, there it is. I'm going to go ahead and pull 2.0 anyways, just to have it. I think that little funky F is fat binary, which means it supports PowerPC as well as 68K. So I think that'll do it, because the nice thing about B hierarchic, again, it's going to occupy more memory when I get it loaded, is, let's see, because this is, oh yeah, this is a shareware version. Yeah, that's it right there. So what we're going to do, we'll just use 2.0 for now. You'll see what that does in a second. Because right now with plain Jane System 7, we don't have, you know, anything with that Apple menu. So let's reboot this thing real quick. So with that extension installed, let's see what our memory footprint goes up to. So, you see what we got now? Now we have the control panels like we would in System 7.5. And we're now only a smidge more, but we're doing pretty good. It just makes it easier to use this system a little more. So be hierarchic, we can go ahead and throw you in the trash can. Get rid of the sit file there. We're done with that. So, and that is basically the system install. So all the utilities we need's in here. We have our disk copy, which is almost always needed, universal, all that. We got our stuff at Expander. We got our CD-ROM emulation, our benchmark type stuff. The only thing we don't have is Norton Utilities, although it's a little bit less important now with BlueSCSIs, but we have our basic internet software. Maybe you can install IRC or some other stuff like that. The only thing we need now is like an office suite or whatever. But that's really all you need to just get started with a vintage Macintosh like this. Oh yeah, there's that Wi-Fi extension I installed. Now, the one thing, this Wi-Fi extension is cool because I can join other networks and see networks and stuff like that. See, there's a debug logger. So that's kind of cool. But anyways, there's an extension, a Wi-Fi extension. It's old, but I honestly think if it's open source, and I'm wondering if some of the code could be borrowed. Because what would be cool is if it wasn't a desk accessory, because this is kind of annoying to have around. What would be cool is if that was up here in the menu bar. So you'd see the Wi-Fi signal there, and you can click on it and drag it down, like a modern Mac, right? There was an extension written for DDWRT, or maybe it was OpenWRT, that would do that on a vintage Mac. So perhaps the two source codes could be combined and then do it that way. But anyways, the most important thing here was just doing what this is. I think this is a benchmark thing. I don't remember. No, it's not. There's a benchmark tool on here, but I don't remember where it is. I don't think it was on the Bootstrap image. No, it's not. But there's a, I think it's called Speed Disk. It might actually be on my file server. This thing moves pretty quick for what it is. I mean, it's a decent performing 030 machine for what it really is. So let's see. Mac, I think it's Mac stuff. Where are you? There it is. I forget what the name of it is. Everything la 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 Mac breadboard, Mac Tech. No. That's 500 megs. Oh, that would take the entire speedometer. There it is. Let's run speedometer. Why the heck not? Let's finish this. Let's finish this video off with speedometer. So that's 220K, and it's gonna pull that down. Actually, we don't have a pie chart. Something happened. Oops. Yeah, that's an issue. We're starting to run out of memory now. Anyways. So that's a stuffit file, which means it's probably going to run stuffit expander. Or not. Nope, it did. Just did it automatically. Let's go ahead and kill you. So, yeah, let's run the speedometer and see what this thing shows. Let's see. Benchmarks. Yeah, whatever. I think that's just a readme. No FPU or anything like that. Duo. Let's see. Analysis. Tests. Run them all. Run them all. We'll just use the internal Mac hard drive because it's a BlueSCSI. See what it does. See what we get. Not bad, not bad. I still find it hilarious it compares itself with the Macintosh Classic as a 1.0 baseline, but that's not surprising because this software is fairly old at this point. There might be newer versions of this software, but I'm just curious how this machine stands up to like an LC3 or something, which may not be in the performance or the performance graphs. I don't know. We're going to find out. I do find it hilarious we're running almost 10 times faster than a Macintosh Classic. But then again, to be fair, it's kind of not hard to beat a Macintosh Classic. Because it's kind of, the memory bus footprint on that thing is kind of terrible. But no, wait, that might be the Classic too. I don't remember. It's doing a bunch of video tests. Not exactly fast on video performance. This uses a PC Chips display driver, which is an off-the-shelf chip, so I could find data on it, probably anyways. So we'll let this run. Alright. All tests are done. Alright, let's see. Performance rating. No, cancel that. Systems comparison. Let's see. Desktop. Where was it? Machine records. There we go. This machine. So we're going to compare this against, say... Well, let's look at an LC. Yeah, But again, it's not hard to beat an LC because that's an 020 machine. Let's look at an SE30. No, we're not even coming close to an SE30. The SE30 is almost twice as fast as this machine, which I find interesting because this has got an 030. Unless this is a hobbled, the 230 might be. Well, hold on, let's see here. No, we're beating out a Color Classic for sure, but we're not touching. Let's see, here we go, 2SI. Nope, we're faster than a 2SI. Oh, there it is, LC3. That's what I was looking at. Okay, that's what I thought. We're about on par with an LC3. If anything, the LC3 is a little bit slower. It's a little bit slower. But this is about what I expected it to be. Because I'm pretty sure the LC3 is 25 megahertz and this is 33, but I could be wrong. But otherwise, architecturally, they're the same. Which is about what I expected. A 2CI is going to kind of beat the pants out of this thing. Yeah, that's what I thought. No, actually, no. 2CI is not as fast. But for some reason, this SE30 is distorted. This isn't right. There's no way. Ah, it's because it's the demo. Demo was overwritten. Well, that'll do it. Let's look at a Powerbook 100. Yeah. Let's look at a Powerbook 170. Ah, you know, this machine is actually beating out a Powerbook 170. Not in the CPU math department, though. Because I think the 170 has an FPU, which makes a lot of sense. But with Powerbook 140, which should be... Well, no, that doesn't have an FPU. No, Powerbook 140 is slower. Okay, Mac Classic 2. Here we go. Oh yeah, we're not even in the same league. There we go. Quadra 700. That doesn't seem right. Why is the CPU over here 9.17, 2. I don't know. This stuff is kind of weird. Very, very weird. No, I'm not going to save that. We're going to close all of that. Everything's done here. Actually, I'm going to get... Well, no, I'll leave that alone. I'll just throw that in the utilities folder so I have it. And I don't need the 3.1.1 because it's not important, so I can throw it in the trash can. Anyways. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is a repair restoration of a Powerbook Duo, along with a basic system install in preparation. And this thing is ready to go. So we can start unplugging stuff and all of that. So there we go. Quick little video. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have one. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching.